As David mentioned, I studied the dynamics between broadacre farming and labour management systems used to maximise productivity, and the study topic was titled Growing a Business with People. This is a photo of myself and my dad and my brother back in 1994 in a 4-tonne Onslow barley crop on a GRDC People and Profits poster. And so it was quite fitting that GRDC were my core investor last year, and I'm forever grateful for their support. Just a few other thank yous. I must thank Jim Gelch and Nuffield Australia, providing me with a life-changing, game-changing opportunity. It's not only been a investment in our business, it's been an investment in myself, and it's been truly amazing. Also like to thank my mum and dad and my partner Elsa, who's here today. Their support and patience throughout last year was just fantastic and made life so easy while I was away from the business. Max Brooks, who's pictured here, he's the main man at home. He's been with us for over 20 years now, and probably one of the biggest assets to our business. And him and the team stepped up again while Dad and I were away for some periods last year, and I'm forever grateful for that great man's efforts. The Nuffield Brazil GFP, well, we'll just be friends forever. It was just a fantastic group, and we bonded so well, and I'm very proud at all their presentations the last few days. They've done themselves and their industries very proud. And lastly but not least, the Nuffield Network. It's obviously very daunting when you first awarded a scholarship, but the network has been so supportive and very helpful in the transition through last year. So here's a bit of a snapshot of the business. I suppose the main point you can take away is we really try and maximise the interaction between the sheep and cropping system. We'll graze a lot of crops, we're really late lambers, utilisation of feed on offer to the best of our ability in order to really try and maximise that stocking rate. We try and avoid contractors as much as possible, try and do everything ourselves, but that's been at the expense of our labour force. It's been quite unstable at times, we've been losing guys, and hence we've had a bit of an over-reliance on foreign labour to get the job done. And when Travis Cloak was replaced by an American rookie paid probably a tenth of his wage, that was quite consistent with some of the themes that we've been going through within our own business. And in Australia, the number of people working in agricultural areas is decreasing, and the market has changed from an employee-driven market to a candidate-driven market, where employees are essentially sport for choice with where they work. And after meetings with Bill O'Keefe in Ireland, he quoted, "There is a war on talent," and I really genuinely believe this is a challenge that every person in this room and every industry faces. We're all fighting for those A players out there, each and every one of us. It's just a matter of how we attract them to our own businesses. So genuinely you need to ask yourself, what is your HR plan? Does your business have an HR plan? Do you have a process when it comes to employing the right person? Is there a plan in place for if someone happened to leave? Is there a fallback there? So hopefully some of my findings from my travels hopefully help to enhance your abilities as farm managers in this area. So the study questions, which I really aimed to try and ask throughout the period last year, was what are the best ways to attract and engage the current labour force? And then once you have them within your business, how do you retain them for the long run? And if you attract, engage and retain, you've made big steps in becoming the employer of choice. These are just a few businesses that I visited last year. There were over 120 meetings that I had, 81 during our GFP, and 90% of the businesses on this screen were aware of the Nuffield program, which made me so privileged to be a part of, and it was very humbling to be a part of this organisation. So some of the findings, there's certainly no silver bullet out there, but there are a number of 1% centres that collectively if they're all practiced together, can actually account for a lot in the grand scheme of things when it comes to staff retention and attraction. And surprisingly, which was a little bit disappointing to me, there were only a small number of businesses that didn't have an issue with their team. I sort of concluded in my head that there's a big gap in the industry in this area where the needs of the farmer are far greater than what HR resources are out there to utilise. I mean, there's so much information out there when it comes to managing price risk and exchange rates, interest rates and agronomy, all that sort of things, but there's very limited information out there when it comes to managing the human brain. Family structure and business strategy needs to be clear before you even think about managing people that aren't related. And if it's not quite sound from the top, is there a board structure required, or is there a strategic plan in place? These businesses that I visited in Kansas, in Brazil, and in Keith in South Australia, Brendan, Ryan, Damien, I suppose Tom Smart, all showed great examples of having a really strong corporate governance from the top. And this last point's becoming even more critical, employing the right person first instead of working out 3 months later that he's not quite the right fit within the business, because in this day and age it's becoming harder and harder to remove someone from the business. And this is the challenge that this industry faces and many other industries face. With the average age of the farmer being 58, by 2020, 40% of our workforce will be occupied by Gen Ys and millennials. And they think completely differently to the baby boomers. They work to live rather than live to work. And the scary stats are that they average more than 17 employees in a lifetime. A huge challenge for not only our business but many other industries in enhancing stability within your labour force. That's going to be a challenge when they're changing roles every 2 years. I suppose a massive distinction from the baby boomers is they're not driven by money. They're driven more so by people and cultural fit, which is something we're certainly going to get our head around, and it makes it more and more important to really try and instill a strong working culture within your business to really try and attract this next generation of employees. Pretty simply, success attracts people, and we're going to have to do a lot within our industry to really promote how good this industry is and why it should be great to be a part of. The one business that I sort of used as my benchmark throughout my travels, it was essentially open book management. The owner of the business had taken a huge step back from the day-to-day operations of the business, and instead of micromanaging and managing all the little daily issues in and out, he chose to lead rather than manage. And as a result, he probably had a huge amount of loyalty back returned in advance. And this is probably the only business that I visited that never had an issue with his team. And I kept asking him, are you sure you haven't had a problem here and there? Because everywhere I visited, there was always a few people that had issues here and there, but he'd never had anybody leave, and he created a completely harmonious working culture and a feeling of ownership that the staff felt a part of it. That old cliche of skin in the game is so powerful, and it was very evident within this business. I think, yes, he probably lost some efficiencies along the way going down this process, but I think he received a lot more amount of loyalty back as a consequence. The way he was able to monitor day-to-day proceedings was that they had a daily meeting every morning, and this was one of their meetings. In the morning, they just sat around and had breakfast together and just talked about what they were going to do during the day. And the owner, who's pictured here, pretty much did whatever he could to try not to intervene and tried to make things as harmonious as possible. So, looking back at the attracting and engaging question, here are a few points which I really think can really enhance your ability to attract and engage, especially that next generation. The top one's really powerful, just simply understanding the employee's vision, understanding where they want to be in the next 5 years. What's their purpose in life? What plans have they got in place to fund their own retirement plans? And then if you're able to match the employee's vision with the business goals and aims, it can actually be really powerful in enhancing and engaging that employee to the business. And like Dennis mentioned in the last speech, just simply understanding the why. Why what they're doing every day is important can be very powerful when it comes to engaging. Something that I visited quite a lot in a few dairies through America. This was one specifically at Riverview Farms in Morris, Minneapolis. They had some really strong core values, and they were extremely disciplined to these core values. If someone within their business didn't abide by one of these core values, they were removed from the business. And they obviously employed to them as well. And that's something that we've already really looked to try and emulate within our own business. Everywhere around the farm there's a bloody poster of this in every ute and workshop, and really trying to establish some really strong core values and really trying to set a nice strong working culture and some values that everybody can abide by. I think that's a really powerful step in really trying to change the culture within the business. Obviously, communication is just a fantastic asset, just to keep explaining why what they're doing is important. Flexibility in farming is always critical, because we're forever dependent on what the sky has to offer. So that constant communication becomes more important as a result. And reputation from the outside. Nowadays, anybody can go and look up my name and see what dirt they can find on me before they go and work within our business. And the Bush Telegraph's getting even stronger. So having that reputation, that good work reputation within your community, within your industry, and from outside your industry, is becoming more and more important when it comes to attracting those A players. And then retaining. Leadership from the top, as I mentioned, with the family units is critical. Leadership really helps when it comes to training, coaching, believing people, and trusting people are great assets of leadership. And the empowerment of staff and delegation of responsibility to others is just such an easy thing to do in terms of that, getting them that feeling of skin in the game. There are obviously lots of little charts and certain things that can really help to promote ownership and accountability in the certain roles they have within their business. And continual growth through training is critical. Continually upskilling that person to become better at what they do and better as a person. When I visited Michael Horsch in Germany and Czech Republic, pictured up here, he just continued to talk about teaching and motivating them. Because you need to keep motivating. If you stop motivating them, they'll motivate themselves to work somewhere else, and you'll be stuck with whatever's left. Spearhead International in the UK, Poland and Czech Republic that I visited had just this fantastic university and internship program, and they were essentially breeding up their own team how they wanted to, which was quite a powerful thing that a number of the corporate models are doing quite well in terms of bringing up that next generation of employees. Interestingly, when I went to a conference in Quebec, Canada, a Google speaker talked about the bungee program that they'd started, which pretty much gives a person in a specific role the opportunity to go and try a different role within the business. So instead of losing that person to somewhere else to try that role, they could change within the business to try and help promote that retention, which could be quite powerful within your own business. And obviously a strong community, if you're in a remote area, it really helps along the way in that retention game. Good facilities and up-to-date equipment certainly help along the way. These are some facilities in Indiana at Tom Farms, just an outrageous workshop that you couldn't find a speck of dust. Not quite that extreme, not quite to that extent at home, but the point is just trying to have things neat and tidy and making them happy to be a part of that element of the business. Marcelo in Montez at Montesa in Uberlandia in Brazil, had built his own school for his employees' children to go. Truly inspirational stuff, and that was a huge way that he gained loyalty back from his employees. And obviously modern housing is very underrated. It's critical to try and make sure the wife's really happy with what the husband's doing, and modern house is critical in that area. Compensation was a real big challenge for me throughout wherever I went, and I genuinely believe if they're there for the money, they're there for the wrong reasons. Getting a person emotionally connected to the business is the best way to have them within the business, I believe. And I genuinely believe from all my travels, I concluded that bonuses didn't work. Over time, they became expected, and they just, however, I reckon they can work if they're aligned with the business culture and core values or something like that. For example, just giving them a bonus for finishing seeding, I really didn't. Over time, a lot of people believe that, you know, people just knew that bonus was coming regardless of when seeding finished or anything like that, but they do have a place if they're strategically managed. Other incentives which I really looked into, the partnerships and phantom stock plans, they could work, but I sort of concluded that simplicity rules, and they can jeopardise the quality of work if the goal of the partnership or the stock plan wasn't in line with what the actual business vision and aims were. I saw a few businesses that were leasing land to employees, and that seemed to work well, just as a way to get that bit of ownership with what they do into the business and help them understand the inputs and outputs of running that paddock independent to the business. But simply, in all this, I really like you just to remember that try and motivate people more than money can. So, in conclusion, your business really needs to become the employer of choice. I reckon the defining moment you've become the employer of choice is when you've got people knocking on your door wanting to work for you. To become the employer of choice, certainly business goals and staff involvement are critical. Understanding the employee's vision, core values in place and employing to those core values can be really powerful. And obviously communication and weekly meetings. And there are lots of little great apps that I forgot to mention, like WhatsApp and Wunderlist are great little apps which really help to help communicate within the business if that's how you communicate. Those top 4 points really help to define a working culture. And I really believe working culture is defined by the ability of your business to run when you're here today, when you're not around. And if that's working harmoniously, I think you've gone great steps in establishing a really strong working culture. Good facilities and generally just treating people like you'd like to be treated certainly help along the way in retaining, engaging and attracting. Your team needs to be seen as an investment rather than a cost. So imagine if you didn't train them, essentially, and the disasters that might happen if you didn't spend that time and effort and money in training them the right way. The next generation of people think differently to the baby boomers, and it's going to be up to us as an industry to promote your business and industry correctly. And I generally believe the most successful businesses around the world that I visited were the ones that delegated responsibility to others. Thanks very much.